Hello there, you are watching CNN Money Switzerland. I'm Ana Maria Montero, and welcome to The One Thing. It was day one of the partial lockdown here in Switzerland after the Federal Council expanded business closures to include shops, restaurants, sports facilities, and other public gatherings. Europe as a whole moved to restrict entry, while individual countries also tightened borders. Aside from trucks in transit or carrying goods, Switzerland is open only to citizens, residents, and commuters. With tens of millions of people confined to their homes, the list of large manufacturers shutting down is growing. Volkswagen said Tuesday that it would close most of its European plants for 2 weeks because of uncertainty over demand for cars and supplies of parts. The aircraft manufacturer Airbus also suspended production in France and Spain this week as a precaution against the spread of the virus. More and more economists are predicting the pandemic will cause a global recession. The Swiss economy will also slump during the first half of the year, with export industries hardest hit before slowly returning to growth. The Swiss Economic Institute COF said Tuesday. Now, stocks in Europe struggled for direction, staying in the red in afternoon trading. The three major U.S. indexes opened higher, but quickly slipped into the red in choppy trading a day after Wall Street recorded historic declines. Switzerland has recorded 2,269 confirmed cases of the virus, including 14 deaths. Globally, more than 185,000 people have contracted the disease, and more than 7,400 have died. Now, meanwhile, the testing for the virus has been a point of controversy as more and more countries limit their testing to those showing the most symptoms. Earlier, we asked EPFL professor and epidemiology expert Marcel Salate whether these were a little too late. Let's take a listen. All right, Marcel, we are in day one of lockdown here in Switzerland. Where do I find you? Are you working from home or your office? How are you managing this?
I'm working from home, and I'm doing that since about 3 weeks.
Okay, all right. And you find that this is working from home. Is this an effective measure? Is this something that most of us are doing at some level, but should be doing also?
Well, we certainly should be doing if we can. I mean, I realize I'm in a privileged situation that I can run, a research lab on digital epidemiology from anywhere, and we're doing that. But I realize that's not so easy for everyone. But clearly, from an epidemiological perspective, there's nothing better. I'm not going to infect anyone. No one's going to infect me. So it's exactly what's needed. We need to cut these transmission chains.
Now, you've been very vocal about the need for testing here in Switzerland. Are things just not moving fast enough? And why do you think that is?
Well, yeah, I think they're not moving fast enough. I think we should have started testing more liberally a long time ago. It just hasn't been part of the strategy. I cannot really say why that is. I don't know. But very clearly from many Asian countries in particular, we've learned that this is a strategy with which you can actually keep things under control. The challenge, of course, now is that once you reach a certain number of cases, and presumably there's many cases that are not detected yet, just ramping up your testing capacity overnight is very, very challenging. But in the long run, I think it's the only way that we can get the situation under control. We have to go and cut these transmission chains. And you can do that if you find the people who have the virus, if you isolate them, and then if you also, quarantine their contacts. That's how you basically can cut this. There's no other way.
But aren't we at a point where we've kind of lost track of who's come in contact with who? I mean, are we just too far along in this chain to really be able to say, okay, you've got it, you need to isolate and know exactly who to quarantine?
Well, no, we're not. I mean, I think it's late, but it's not too late in my view. And it just now what is required, right, is first of all a will to really tackle this problem. I know a lot of people are saying, well, it's a bit too late now. Okay, so what, right? We cannot say it's a bit too late, and we can't say, well, it would take weeks. I mean, we're staring at the threat of this virus now. Do we want to stop it or not? And if we do, we have to get creative. And I've been speaking to a few cantonal authorities that are absolutely on the roll and are really trying to solve this situation. So I think where there's will, there's a way. It's not too late.
And what is your data telling us about the effectiveness of isolation and quarantine?
Well, it's hugely effective. I mean, it's one doesn't even need much data, but there's many analyses of countries that have done it, in particular South Korea, because often also, right, people say, well, we can't really do this with this contact tracing because that would be such an intrusion into our privacy. I think South Korea is also a very free country and has shown that it can be done if you want to do it. But again, from an epidemiological perspective, right, you don't even need the data. You already know ahead that this is going to work, because if you want to stop an epidemic, right, you have to cut the transmission chains. There is no other way. And that's the way to do it, right? Isolate the people that have the virus and quarantine the ones that have it, but that are not yet symptomatic. And if you manage to do that, you will bring the curve down.
Now, yesterday we had a talk with the CEO of Roche, with Mr. Schwan, and he was saying that their tests are already, the ones that were also FDA approved, are also here on the market in Switzerland. Does this mean that things may be ramping up then?
Yeah, for sure, things are ramping up, and I think the technology that Roche provides is a key ingredient here. I think there's probably also going to be at some point sooner or later, rapid tests that could help us to do a first triage. I mean, it's all a question, and of course, of sensitivity and specificity, but things are ramping up. I mean, the question will always be, do we have enough? And I think at any point in time, the answer will be, for a long time, no, we don't. So fine, right? But that's not a reason to say, therefore, we cannot do it. Then we have to say, okay, how do we deal with having not enough tests? How do we prioritize, and so on? There's always a way. You just have to be willing to find it.
And is this something you've already given some thought to, how we could prioritize testing?
Yeah, I mean, so ourselves, we've given this some thought to, and we continue to do that. I mean, these are not trivial questions, but people should also realize, right? Research groups around the world have been working on this, not just since last week, not just since last month, but for years and for decades. So there's a lot of knowledge that can now be taken from this research, and people around the world are actively doing it and are sharing their results in real time online. So it's a very new world also from that perspective, but that gives me hope, right, that we can catch up. We can be fast enough now.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Marcel, for your insights and for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
And in sports news, our correspondent Matt Layton has been following the fate of two big sporting events this summer. Okay, Matt, let's start with UEFA. Cat's out of the bag. It's been postponed in a press release this afternoon. Tell me, how did the decision come about, and what was, in fact, the tipping point?
The decision was made after consultation with all the stakeholders, I suppose, 55 interested countries. They were on a teleconference, all the parties of the Professional Footballers League. They were the everyone who's involved at top level was in one of three teleconferences this morning and this afternoon. Around about 1 o'clock, we had a couple of people saying, we know what's happened. The tournament has been postponed from the 12th of June this year to the 11th of June next year. And then at 3 o'clock, a little bit later, the Norwegians, they said, official, it's been postponed. The Swedish came on, and then everyone was analysing. And around about 3:15 this afternoon, the media department of UEFA, they actually put out a press release stating the reasons behind it, saying that public health is obviously the priority. We do thank FIFA for their help in organising this. You help all the parties, and yes, we're going to put it for next year.
Obviously, we know these decisions aren't easy, but when you think about postponement, okay, we just move the dates. What are, in fact, the repercussions behind this?
Well, there's so many knock-on events. For example, next year in the summer, there was supposed to be the Women's Euro going to held in London, and we haven't had any official results yet, but that's almost certainly going to be moved. And then FIFA, about the same time, they were having their debut in the 24 Club World Club competition, which was supposed to be a really fanfare event held in China. So that's going to have to be moved as well. The idea behind it is hopefully if this coronavirus blows over, they can maybe finish the European leagues in the next 3 months and then start afresh next year. They've also coordinated with America. The Copa 2020 has been postponed until next year as well. So yes, there's going to be massive repercussions. There's billions of Swiss francs hanging on media rights and all sorts of competitions. But as we know, we're in an extraordinary situation, and most people think that UEFA really had no choice for the human safety.
And speaking, of course, of postponements, I mean, 40 kilometers down the road, the IOC has also been meeting to discuss what they're going to do about this other summer event happening, the Tokyo Games. What's the latest on that?
No postponement yet. They're very pragmatic and they're saying we're conscious of the situation. We have a huge challenge with Olympic qualifying competitions, but we still have 19 weeks until the Olympics come forward. We had Shinzo Abe, the Prime Minister from Japan, yesterday saying, well, he's got agreement from the G7 people that it's going to be fine and no problems. The betting sites are saying we think it's going to be postponed. There was a survey yesterday with the biggest Japanese TV channel, and 70% of Japanese people think it's not going to go ahead for normal times. But they're hanging in there. As I say, there's a lot of time to go, but logic would say it's going to be very, very difficult if everything else is cancelled to have the athletes in the qualifications and go forward from there.
Okay, so it doesn't sound like there's been any change of messaging on behalf of Japan. They're still...
No, well, Thomas Bach, the president, is a very dominating figure, I suppose, and in the right sense. And he's set a steady ship. You know, they're trying to do everything they can, but every single day we have more qualification challenges. 57% of the athletes have actually qualified, which means that 43% have yet to qualify, and it's going to be a real challenge. They are saying, to be fair, in the press release they released 2 minutes after the UEFA one this afternoon at 18 minutes past 3. There's going to be lots of flexibility. Nothing's going to happen until the end of May. And then after that, we're going to try and qualify. If not, we might go to world rankings. But the idea is to make it as fair as possible. But to be honest with you, can it go ahead in these conditions? It's going to be very, very difficult to see that.
Yes, I have to agree with you. But what about the torch? I mean, it's still en route, I assume.
Yes, it started a couple of days ago in Olympia with no spectators. It's going to be on its way to Japan. They're hopefully going to go through all the 47 precincts. Again, that's big repercussions because the sponsor had all put big side events there. It's going to be really difficult to see how that goes forward. But I suppose it's the element, isn't it, to show that the flame is alive. Personally, I'm not sure it's a great idea to do that, but they've decided to keep it going for now.
Now, I can see you're working from home, and many times you have come to us from your home, but I also know that you come to the office. So just wondering, for you personally, 15 years as a sports journalist, have you ever experienced anything like this?
No. Simple as that. No, I mean, we've had a few scares. I was lucky enough to be working in the London Games, and there was big demonstrations a year before. I was working out in Rio for the Olympic Games there, and there was a Zika problems a couple of months before. But no, I suppose for those who've lived through a world war, different circumstances, but they can understand the world coming to a halt. But I don't think it's possible to understand. Everything has to be put aside so we can get control of this virus.
All right, great, Matt. Thank you so much for joining us, and I know you'll keep us posted.
Absolutely.
And as always, we urge you to get involved in the conversation by checking in with our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and whatever the comment, do stay in touch and tell us what's on your mind. And of course, all of our content, including everything you've just seen, is also available on our website, cnnmoney.ch. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.